Well, Germany's election is fast approaching, with polls indicating that Sunday's vote is likely to shift the country to the right. Despite voter concerns about a sluggish economy, the election's been dominated by Germany's migration policies, security, the war in Ukraine, and outside interference.
This election was supposed to be about the economy. Then Elon Musk got involved, endorsing the far-right Alternative for Germany party, or AfD.
Only AfD can save Germany.
He then appeared at a campaign event encouraging Germans to let go of the past.
Children should not be guilty of the sins of their parents, or even let alone their parents, their great-grandparents maybe.
That gave the anti-immigration party exposure they've never had before.
Wir wollen Sicherheit.
We want security and the rule of law. We want to be able to move freely and safely in our homeland.
A deadly knife attack forced migration to the top of the agenda. A mentally ill Afghan man stabbed to death 2 people, including a toddler. The suspect, whose asylum request had been rejected, was meant to have been deported. The favourite to be Chancellor, Friedrich Merz of the CDU, said he would close the borders and turn away asylum seekers.
The limit has finally been reached. We are faced with a shambles of 10 years of misguided asylum and immigration policy in Germany.
The following week, Merz relied on far-right AfD votes to pass a non-binding motion in the Bundestag. That kicked off a furious debate about whether the CDU would actually work with the AfD. Angela Merkel got involved. Hundreds of thousands protested. Olaf Scholz, current Chancellor and SPD leader, said voters could no longer trust Merz.
This is a breach of word, a taboo break that should not have happened.
Then US Vice President J.D. Vance delivered a speech for the history books, demanding that German politicians tear down a wall, a firewall, the convention of not working with the far right.
There's no room for firewalls. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you.
For the leader of the Green Party, hoping to return to government as a junior partner, that was an attack, not just on Germany, but on democracy.
And that is under attack. From climate action to the war in Ukraine to what we are seeing now and the rise of right-wing populistic parties in our liberal democracies. They all have one sense, one common sense. They want to have unlimited power.
A threat to democracy? Add that to concerns about migration, an economic recession, and the prospect of a wider war, and you have an election where the stakes could scarcely be higher.
A report from our political correspondent, Matthew Moore, who joins us now. Welcome, Matthew. Sunday's the big day. What are the polls saying?
Well, Phil, barring a major upset, it's pretty clear that we know now that the CDU, the centre-right Christian Democrat Party, and their sister party, the CSU, are going to win this election. That's because most polls give them a 10-point lead. But the big question is who are they going to govern with? Now, they would prefer to govern with the centre-left Social Democrats. There's probably the most overlap with their programme. But this election is on a knife edge, and the reason for that is there are a number of small parties who are threatening to just come over that 5% hurdle that you need to reach in order to make it into the parliament. And if they do, that really changes the maths completely and could make it a lot harder to cobble that coalition together. And that can have a big impact on who we see in government next time and whether there's a 3 or a 4-party coalition. Now, we just had a 3-party coalition, and that was the approval ratings were dismal. And so there's a real feeling that Germany needs to avoid an unstable government like that going forward.
The right-wing AfD looks likely to become the second biggest party in Parliament. Is there any chance of them forming part of the next German government?
No. There is no chance of the AfD forming the next government, and that's because of something that's called the firewall. We just heard J.D. Vance talk about that. That's a convention that the parties have in Germany, the other parties have, where they say they won't work with the Alternative for Germany party because they're too extreme. Having said that, the AfD is likely to get its best result ever. A party that was founded in 2013 is looking likely to get something like 20% of the vote. And that's important for them. That's a big milestone for that party, as they've got their eyes on 2029, the next German national elections, where they hope at that point that they will be able to form or at least play a role in a German coalition government.
OK, so polls indicate this shift rightwards with the popularity of the centre-right and the far-right. What then can we expect to change in Germany after the election?
There's a couple of big issues, really, that Germany is faced with at the moment. The first one we heard about in that report was migration. The centre-right leader, Friedrich Merz, has promised really a big crackdown on irregular migration. He's promising things like permanent border controls at Germany's 3,800-kilometre border. That's in a bid to really stop the number of people coming in every day without papers and people who are coming to claim asylum. He's saying that people coming to claim asylum at Germany's borders will be turned away. It's a dramatic shift from the current policy within the European Union. And his opponents say that it's actually legally quite questionable whether he could actually do that. But that's what he's saying. And he's saying, if you want to govern with me, you need to sign up to that. The other big issue is the one we also heard about in my report is the impact that the United States is having on this election, because it's kind of the sounds and the noises coming out of the Trump administration basically are telling Europe it needs to do a whole lot more on defence and security. And there's a general consensus here in Germany and Berlin that that's going to mean for the next government that they're going to have to spend a lot more on defence. They're going to have to work much more closely with European allies and get a grip on these big issues. The other big issue is obviously the economy. German economy is in a recession, and so Friedrich Merz, the man who's leading this government, he's basically promising, or who will lead the next government if he wins, he's promising tax cuts. He's promising both income tax cuts and corporate tax cuts, which he hopes will stimulate the economy and give it a kickstart.
Thanks for that, Matthew. DW political correspondent Matthew Moore.